The Galactic Arena was a monstrous construct, a coliseum forged in the cold heart of deep space. Its vast stands held thousands of spectators, their voices a cacophony of alien tongues, their eyes fixed on the blood-stained sand below. Beasts of war, warriors of legend, and monstrous champions had all bled here, their bones now dust beneath the feet of the next challengers. And yet, the arrival of a single human had shifted the atmosphere in a way few could explain. John Carter stepped onto the black and metal floor of the Gladiator barracks, his boots scuffing against the worn surface. The air was thick with the scent of sweat, oil, and old blood. Eyes turned toward him, some curious, others dismissive. He was lean, his frame built for endurance rather than brute strength, and his expression was unreadable. To the assembled gladiators, he was an anomaly, a curiosity at best, a joke at worst. Near the far side of the chamber, Zeltor watched the human with mild amusement. The reigning champion, his emerald-scale body stretched nearly 8 feet tall, muscle coiled beneath armored plates that shimmered under the artificial lighting. His thick tail curled lazily around the base of his throne-like seat, the clawed tips tapping a slow, deliberate rhythm against the floor. A human, Zeltor said at last, his deep voice carrying easily over the murmurs of the gathered warriors. This is what they send to entertain us. A few chuckles rippled through the room, some genuine, others nervous. John didn't react. He had long since grown accustomed to that particular tone, amusement edged with dismissal. It was the same everywhere. Humans were known, but not feared. They were a species of traders, explorers, diplomats. Their presence in the galactic arena was unheard of, and for good reason. None had ever competed. None had ever been deemed worthy. A squat, four-armed official approached, a datapad clutched in his lower hands while the upper pair gestured lazily. John Carter, Terran, he read aloud, his mandibles clicking. No known arena history. No genetic enhancements. No cybernetic augments. No psi abilities. No record of combat within the gladiatorial circuits of any sanctioned system. And yet, the official hesitated, his bulbous eyes flicking back to the screen. A silence settled over the barracks. The amusement from before had faded, replaced by something else. Uncertainty. Suspicion. The official's mandibles twitched as he continued. Kill count, 2,467 confirmed combatants. Across 42 campaigns. Across 12 planetary conflicts. No captures. No prisoners. The chamber shifted. The warriors who had stood close instinctively took a step back, their expressions tightening. Zeltor's tail stopped tapping. John exhaled, slow and measured. He had seen this reaction before. It was always the same. Numbers meant nothing until they did, until they painted a picture that was too vivid to ignore. The gladiators in this room had killed, had survived wars of their own, but the scale of his history was different. They were fighters, champions of the arena. He was something else entirely. Impossible, someone muttered. A bipedal feline warrior narrowed her slitted eyes at the datapad, disbelief hardening her features. No human lives through that many battles. The official hesitated, then turned the pad toward them. The numbers were real. The records were verified. No falsifications. No exaggerations. Zeltor rose from his seat, his massive frame blocking the light above him. He approached John, his talons clicking against the metal floor. The scent of reptilian musk and polished armor filled the space between them. "Tell me, human," he rumbled, his voice quieter now, the amusement gone. "What kind of war produces numbers like these?" John tilted his head slightly, his expression still unreadable. "The kind you don't walk away from," he said. A cold weight settled in the room. The gladiators had seen killers before, had fought monsters that could tear through flesh like parchment, had battled warriors bred solely for combat. But this was different. There was no bravado in the human's voice, no boastfulness. Just a simple, undeniable fact. The official cleared his throat, trying to push past attention. We need to assign his first match." Zeltor studied John for a moment longer before stepping back, though his gaze lingered. "Put him against K'Arkal," he said finally, his lips pulling back in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Let's see what kind of legend this human truly is." The crowd murmured at the name. K.R. Call was not the strongest in the arena, but he was among the deadliest. A towering insectoid warrior, his bladed limbs could cut through armor with ease, and his speed was unmatched. He had claimed over 100 lives in the pit, carving through challengers in mere moments. John nodded once, as if he had already expected something like this. He turned without another word, stepping away from the gathered warriors. As he walked, the others parted instinctively, giving him a wide berth. Behind him, Zeltor watched with narrowed eyes. For the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar. It was not respect. Not yet. It was something far colder. The arena was a cathedral of violence, its towering walls humming with containment fields that kept the combat within and the audience safe. Thousands of spectators filled the seats, their voices rising in a chaotic blend of anticipation and bloodlust. The air pulsed with energy, charged by the rhythmic pounding of war drums. The scent of ozone and old carnage lingered, a reminder of how many had fought and fallen in this place. John Carter stood at the center of it all, his posture relaxed, his breathing steady. The floor beneath his boots was slick, the remnants of previous battles seared into the very foundation of the Colosseum. Across from him, K.R. Call loomed, a nightmare of serrated chitin and glistening mandibles. The insectoid warrior stood nearly a full head taller than John, its four-bladed limbs shifting in a slow, deliberate motion, each movement a study in lethal grace. The murmurs of the crowd had shifted. The laughter that had accompanied John's entrance had faded into an uneasy hum. The records had been made public. The kill count, the battles, the implications. But knowledge was one thing. Seeing was another. A booming voice echoed across the arena, the unseen announcer reveling in the spectacle. For the first time in the history of the Galactic arena, a human enters the pit. Will he prove himself worthy? Or will his bones join the countless remains beneath his feet? Warriors, begin. K.R. Call moved first. The creature was impossibly fast, a blur of segmented limbs and razor-edged death. A lesser opponent might not have even seen the attack coming. The gladiator lunged, one psi-like arm arcing toward John's throat, another aiming to sever his midsection. John sidestepped. The motion was precise, economical. The first blade missed by less than an inch, slicing the air where his neck had been. The second skittered past his torso, missing its mark by a breath. He twisted, planting his foot in the sand, and drove his elbow into the insectoid's side with bone-cracking force. K.R. Call reeled more from surprise than pain. Its secondary limb snapped forward, aiming to impale. John moved again, weaving through the attacks with an eerie calm. No wasted effort, no unnecessary movement. His body reacted as if it had done this 1,000 times before, because it had. The crowd noise faltered, a ripple of confusion spreading through the stands. This wasn't normal. Fighters didn't move like this. They brawled, they clawed, they struggled. John didn't struggle. K.R. Call hesitated for half a second. It was all John needed. He stepped inside the insectoid's reach, his hands moving in a blur. A twisting grip, a sharp rotation. The sound of chitin snapping filled the air as one of K.R. Call's limbs twisted violently out of joint. The gladiator screeched, more enraged than agony, its remaining arms slashing wildly. John ducked beneath the frenzied onslaught, slipping past K.R. Call's defenses. He was inside now, closer than any sane opponent would dare to be. His fist shot forward, not at the warrior's armored torso, not at its clawed limbs. He went for the throat. The impact was brutal. A sickening crunch echoed to the Colosseum as K.R. Call's exoskeletal plating caved beneath the strike. The gladiator staggered, choking, its mandibles clicking frantically. John did not stop. His hands found purchase on either side of the insectoid's head. A sharp twist. Silence. K.R. Call's body spasmed once before collapsing, its lifeless husk kicking up a plume of dust. John exhaled slowly and straightened, his expression unreadable. The arena remained silent. It wasn't just that he had won. It wasn't even that he had killed. It was how he had done it. Efficient. Precise. No wasted effort. No prolonged struggle. K.R. Call had been one of the deadliest warriors in the Colosseum, and John had put him down with mechanical ease. Then the silence shattered. It wasn't cheering. It wasn't even anger. It was something else. Something raw. Something unspoken. Fear. John could see it in the faces of the gladiators watching from the sidelines. He could hear it in the whispers spreading through the audience. This wasn't the spectacle they had expected. This was something else entirely. Zell-Tor, watching from his elevated platform, had gone completely still. His massive hands curled into tight fists, claws pressing into his palms. The smug amusement he had once held was gone, replaced by something colder, something darker. John met his gaze across the distance. The champion did not look away. But for the first time in years, he felt something unexpected, something he had not felt in a very long time. Doubt. John Carter killed again. And again. And again. The tournament pressed forward. And with each fight, the atmosphere in the arena changed. At first, there had been skepticism, lingering disbelief that his victory over K'Arkal had been anything more than a fluke. But that illusion shattered with each subsequent battle. John did not just win. He ended fights with terrifying speed and precision. Opponents who had stood victorious over 100 challengers crumbled in seconds. The crowds, once roaring with bloodlust, now hesitated before they cheered, as if uncertain whether what they were witnessing was still entertainment or something else entirely. The gladiators took notice. They had come here for glory, to carve their names into legend. But now, John's name was the only one spoken, whispered in uneasy tones in the barracks, in the halls, in the dark corners where warriors once boasted their kills. He moved through them like a phantom, his presence no longer dismissed, no longer mocked. When he stepped into a room, conversation slowed, eyes darted away, and back stiffened. There was no camaraderie extended to him, no casual jests or friendly wagers. The gladiators of the Colosseum had begun to regard him the way one regards an unfamiliar predator, warily, carefully, always ensuring they were not too close. In the stands, the betting markets had shifted. At first, John's odds had been abysmally low, a joke to those who placed wagers. But after the first two fights, the odds began to plummet, and the gamblers grew uneasy. He was no longer an underdog, no longer an unknown variable. He was a certainty, and certainties did not make for profitable bets. The arena officials noticed, too. This was not what the tournament was meant to be. Gladiators fought, they bled, they suffered for the spectacle. The crowd loved brutality, but they did not come for inevitability. And John Carter had become inevitable. Whispers began circulating among the organizers, discussions behind locked doors. The tournament was designed to have victors, but not like this. Not someone who was making a mockery of the system, who was not just defeating the best the Colosseum had to offer, but dismantling them. It was only a matter of time before someone took action. In the barracks, Zell-Tor watched as John returned from yet another fight. The human had not even broken a sweat. His opponent, a bipedal avian warrior with razor talons, had lasted less than a minute before John had shattered its windpipe with a single calculated strike. Zell-Tor's fingers flexed, his claws scraping against the armrest of his seat. He had fought for years to secure his dominance in the arena, had broken countless challengers to cement his rule. But now, for the first time in as long as he could remember, the outcome of the tournament was not in his hands. The worst part was not John's strength. It was not even his speed. It was his mind. John did not fight like a gladiator. He fought like something else. The other warriors of the Colosseum were battle-hardened, yes. They were ruthless, yes. But they were still predictable. They had a rhythm, a cadence. Even the most skilled among them still fought within the framework of warriors who had been raised in combat pits, in dueling rings, in the traditions of honorable, or at least theatrical, battle. John had no such framework. His movements were stripped of flourish, his attacks devoid of excess. He did not waste time reveling in dominance, did not fight for the crowd's adulation. He fought the way something fights when it has learned that anything less than absolute efficiency meant death. And the others saw it. Zell-Tor could feel in the barracks, in the way the other gladiators had begun to avoid John entirely. They did not taunt him. They did not challenge him outside the arena. They did not seek to prove themselves against him. because deep down they knew this was not a fight for dominance. It was survival, and many of them had begun to realize they did not want to be in his path. That night, in the halls beneath the Colosseum, a gathering took place. It was not official, not sanctioned, but it happened all the same. Zell-Tor stood at the center, his scaled features grim. Around him, some of the tournament's most dangerous competitors watched with tense expressions. "He has to be stopped," one of them growled, a hulking mammalian brute with scars lining his chest. "This isn't a competition anymore. It's a slaughter. He doesn't fight like us," another muttered. "He's something else." Zell-Tor remained silent, his tail flicking slowly. He had ruled this arena for years, had crushed every would-be challenger that had come for his throne. He had faced monsters, assassins, berserkers, and yet nothing had unsettled him quite like the presence of the human. They had all seen warriors who were strong. They had all seen killers who were relentless. But John Carter did not carry himself like a warrior seeking victory. He did not carry himself like a killer reveling in the hunt. He carried himself like a man who had already survived something far worse than this. And that made him terrifying. The air inside the arena was different, heavier, charged with something unspoken yet undeniable. The spectators had come expecting carnage. Yet as the final match loomed, the energy that once fueled their hunger for blood had shifted into something else, something colder. John Carter stood at the center of it all, his expression as unreadable as ever. He had carved a path through the tournament, not with brutality, not with spectacle, but with ruthless efficiency. And now, only one opponent remained. Zell-Tor, the reigning champion, had watched as the human reduced every challenger before him to lifeless husks. He had felt the shift in the arena, the way the other warriors had begun to look at John not as a competitor, but as an executioner. He had felt a tremor in his own gut, a sensation so foreign it had taken him time to recognize it for what it was. Doubt. But Zell-Tor was no coward. He had fought too long and killed too many to shrink away now. If John Carter was to take his throne, he would have to rip it from his hands. The crowd roared as the announcement echoed through the Colosseum. The final match of the tournament. The champion, the undefeated legend of the Galactic arena, Zell-Tor. And the challenger, the human who defied all odds, John Carter. Zell-Tor stepped forward, his massive frame a wall of emerald scales and coiled muscle. His talons flexed, his tail swayed in slow, predatory arcs. He had fought titans. He had crushed warlords. He would break this human like all the others. John simply rolled his shoulders. The signal to begin was given. Zell-Tor struck first. His speed belied his size, a blur of reptilian power as his claws lashed out in a strike meant to tear John in half. It was a move that had ended countless fights before they had even begun. John moved, not back, forward. He stepped into Zell-Tor's reach, defying every instinct a sane fighter should have. The champion's claws grazed past his ribs, close enough to draw blood, but it didn't matter. John was inside his guard now, too close for another sweeping strike. His fist shot forward, hammering into Zell-Tor's midsection with the force of a railgun round. The impact sent a ripple through the champion's body, but he barely staggered. He retaliated with vicious backhand, the force of it enough to shatter bones. John ducked. The strike missed his head by millimeters. In the same motion, he drove an elbow into Zell-Tor's side, targeting the softer plating beneath the scales. The champion grunted, shifting his weight, tried to regain control of the fight. But John did not give him the chance. He did not fight like a gladiator. He did not dance around his opponent, waiting for an opening. He made openings. His strikes were relentless, his movements clinical. There was no hesitation, no wasted effort. Each attack flowed into the next, a symphony of violence honed through wars the rest of the galaxy could not comprehend. For the first time in years, Zell-Tor found himself on the defensive. And then, for the first time ever, he stumbled. The crowd gasped. The mighty champion, the legend of the Colosseum, had been forced back. John pressed forward. A hook to the ribs. A hammering blow to the knee joint. A palm strike that sent Zell-Tor reeling. The champion was fast, powerful, but it did not matter. John had seen this before. He had fought things far worse than this. Zeltor roared, rage burning away hesitation. He lashed out with a desperate, bone-shattering strike. John caught the arm mid-motion. A twist, a crack. The champion's snarl turned into a pained hiss. The arena fell into silence. Zeltor, the undefeated, the unchallenged, the legend, was on his knees. His arm hung uselessly at his side, his breathing ragged. John stood over him, his expression as unreadable as ever. He did not raise his arms in victory. He did not bask in the moment. He simply waited. The champion's chest rose and fell. His gaze lifted, meeting John's. And in that moment, something shifted. Zeltor exhaled, slow and heavy. Then he lowered his head. Submission. The crowd did not cheer. They did not chant. They did not cry out in fury or celebration. They watched, silent and unmoving, as the reality of what had just happened settled in. A human had won, not through brute strength, not through trickery, but through sheer, undeniable mastery of combat. The implications spread like wildfire. Humans were not feared in the galaxy. They were traders, explorers, diplomats. They were weak. But John Carter had shattered that illusion. In the barracks, the remaining gladiators avoided his gaze, shoulders tense, hands gripping weapons that they knew would do nothing against him. Beyond the arena, whispers were spread to every corner of the galaxy, across battlefields, across empires. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not to be underestimated. And John Carter had made sure the entire universe would remember.